A young black woman, worn by life on the streets, knelt beside a crying child. She didn't know that, just a few steps away, the boy's wealthy father was silently watching. Tears streaked down the boy's cheeks as blood dripped from his scraped knee. People walked past, their eyes fixed ahead. In the bustling heart of Ashton City, a child's cries were just background noise. But for Lila, her stomach empty for the second day in a row, that sound broke through her exhaustion. "Hey, sweetheart, let me take a look." She crouched beside the boy, ignoring the wary glances from those rushing by. Her rough hands, darkened by cold and time, gently touched his pale leg. From her coat pocket, she pulled out a small white cloth, clean, almost new. The only thing she owned apart from the clothes on her back. With delicate care, she pressed it to the wound. Just a short distance away, Malcolm Grant stood frozen. He clutched a sleek $1,000 briefcase, unsure of what he was witnessing. His son had darted off, tripped, and now a stranger, clearly homeless, was tending to him. His first instinct was to stop it, but something in the woman's calmness, the way her presence seemed to soothe his son, made him pause. "What happened, buddy?" Lila asked softly, tying the boy's loose shoelace. "I was chasing the birds," he said, pointing to the flock scrambling for crumbs. "My name's Oliver." Lila smiled, bright, almost out of place given her circumstances. "Nice to meet you, Oliver. I'm Lila." Malcolm remained still. Usually a bodyguard would have stepped in by now. But today, wanting rare alone time with his son after months abroad, he'd sent them all away. "All done," Lila said, finishing up. "It's just a little scratch. Try not to wear out those cool sneakers too fast." Then, innocently, Oliver asked, "Why are your clothes dirty?" A heavy silence followed. Malcolm's face flushed, prepared to interrupt. But Lila answered without hesitation. "Because not everyone gets the same chances, kiddo." Her voice was calm, without bitterness. "Sometimes you lose things, a home, a job, the people you love. But you don't lose your heart. Remember that." The words hit Malcolm like a blow to the chest. Just a month earlier, he'd dismissed the homeless as lazy during a company meeting. Now, a woman with nothing had just given away her only clean item to comfort a stranger. Lila stood quickly, brushing away a tear before it could fall. Her stomach growled audibly, and Oliver heard it. She had skipped her last shelter meal to trade for that clean cloth, after learning infections were spreading in nearby camps. "Dad!" Oliver finally noticed Malcolm and ran to him. "She helped me." Malcolm moved toward them, slower than usual. Lila was already slipping away, used to being unwelcome. "Wait," he called out. But she had vanished into the crowd. "She's hungry, Dad," Oliver whispered, tugging on his sleeve. "I heard her stomach." That night, while rain poured over the dark streets of Ashton, Lila curled beneath a loading dock canopy, wondering, what if that interview 3 years ago hadn't ended with, "You're not the right fit for our image"? The same HR manager who had once dismissed her was now smiling from billboards across Holden City, recently promoted to Vice President of Inclusion at Grant Global Corp. What Lila didn't know was that at that very moment, Malcolm Grant was turning every resource at his disposal to find her, driven not by obligation, but by a feeling he hadn't felt in a long time, remorse for the man he had become, and a powerful urge to change that. If this story of compassion versus coldness has moved you, stay with us. Because this simple act of kindness will trigger a chain of events no one, not even the wealthiest man in the city, could have foreseen. 3 days later, a new blow hit Lila. The shelter she sometimes slept in was being shut down for renovations, a term often used when the city needed to clear out the homeless before a major event nearby. "You've got 20 minutes to pack and leave," an officer announced, barely looking at the group. "Where are we supposed to go?" asked an elderly man beside her. "Not my concern," the officer muttered, glancing at his watch. "There's another shelter, about 6 miles east." Lila stuffed her few belongings into a faded backpack. 2 shirts, a toothbrush missing bristles, a creased journal, and a basic makeup set she used for interviews that never led to anything. Then she felt a hand on her shoulder. It was Jonah, a social worker who visited the shelter regularly. "Lila," he said, "there's an opening at the Renewal Project. They're hiring people with real-life street experience for a pilot program. And yes, it pays." He handed her a small card with an address scribbled on it. "Why me?" she asked. "Because you've got something rare," he replied. "Composure. Strength that doesn't crack under pressure. And I saw your file when you applied for housing. Business degree, 3 years in HR before life hit hard." The next morning, rain pouring without mercy, Lila arrived soaked at the center listed on the card. Her shoes squeaked on the polished floors as she walked in. "Can I help you?" The receptionist asked sharply, barely lifting her eyes. "I'm here about the opportunity with the Renewal Project. Jonah Bennett sent me." The woman's face shifted to subtle disapproval. "Are you sure you're in the right place?" A calm, commanding voice broke in. "She's exactly where she belongs." It was Amara Lynn, the program's director, wearing a neat blazer and walking with purpose. She shook Lila's hand without a second thought. In her minimalist office, free from the flashy decor some nonprofits use to impress donors, Amara laid things out clearly. "We're not just here to provide shelter. We aim to uncover the system that keeps people on the streets." Just then, Jonah walked in, holding a thick folder. "I've been digging into Grant Global's impact reports," he said. The name hit Lila like a shockwave. Grant. Malcolm Grant. Amara nodded. "Multi-billionaire, likes to call himself a giver. But truth is, he's one of the major backers of citywide redevelopment plans that keep pushing people like you out of neighborhoods. Our next campaign," she added, "will expose how his brand of charity doesn't match his boardroom decisions." Lila swallowed hard. She had just helped his son. "Why are you telling me all this?" she asked. "Because we need someone who's lived it. Someone who understands the street, but also knows how the corporate world spins stories. Someone who can call out the double standards." Lila didn't mention her recent encounter with Malcolm Grant's son. Something deep inside told her to keep that detail to herself. Over the next few weeks, while gathering stories from families, forced out by Grant Global's redevelopment plans, she began noticing a pattern. A black luxury sedan kept showing up near every site she visited, sometimes parked, sometimes slowly circling. More than once, she had the eerie feeling of being followed. In his high-rise apartment, Malcolm sifted through reports on the Renewal Project, feeling increasingly uneasy as he realized his own business. Policies were squarely in their sights. From the playroom, his son's voice echoed. "Did you find the lady with the headscarf yet, Dad?" "Not yet, buddy," Malcolm replied, "but I'm close." One afternoon, while combing through hiring records, Lila saw a name that made her stomach twist. Daniel Crawford, head of diversity at Grant Global. The same man who had rejected her job application 3 years earlier with the vague explanation that she wasn't a cultural fit. Now he was the face of the company's public inclusivity campaigns, while according to internal sources, quietly blocking candidates of color from management roles behind closed doors. Lila's worn journal wasn't just a place to vent, it was a living document. A record of discrimination in slow motion, seen from ground level, names, dates, coded phrases she'd heard in dozens of job interviews. Now, with the Renewal Project's support, those scribbled notes were becoming actual proof, and as her life began to intersect again with Malcolm's, neither knew that her old backpack, filled with nothing but resilience and truth, held the power to shake a corporate empire. While he searched for her with a troubled conscience, she built the case that would expose everything his company had worked so hard to keep buried, because the people with nothing to lose are often the ones with the most to fight for. Grant Global's annual diversity forum was the flashiest farce in the business world. Held in a velvet-draped conference hall beneath glowing slogans about innovation and equity, executives applauded loudly as Daniel Crawford took the spotlight. As head of diversity initiatives, he beamed, "I'm proud to share that our minority hiring rate has increased by 75% in the last 12 months. Perfect slides appeared behind him, clean fonts, bright colors, feel-good numbers. In the final row, Lila discreetly hit record on a small audio device. It had been handed to her by the Rumiko Initiative, the partner NGO that, thanks to Amara's strategy, had secured her a seat at this very event. Malcolm stood behind the curtain stage right, watching, arms crossed. Since his son met Lila, something inside him had begun to shift. His search for her had pulled back the curtain on his own company's actions, and what he saw disgusted him. And now, Crawford continued, I'd like to welcome our partner organizations for a panel on social inclusion. Lila stood, steady and silent, and walked toward the stage alongside three others. Crawford spotted her, and for a split second, his confident smile cracked. Only someone watching closely would have noticed. "Welcome," he said, voice controlled. "We'll begin with introductions from each group." When it was Lila's turn, she looked directly at the crowd. "My name is Lila Monroe. 3 years ago I applied here, for a position in human resources." A heavy silence filled the room. This wasn't part of the planned script. "At the time," Lila said evenly, "Mr. Crawford told me I didn't fit the company's brand." Her voice didn't tremble. 3 months later, I lost my home. 6 months later, I was sleeping in shelters. Crawford coughed, uneasy. "I think we're straying from the agenda," but Lila continued, unfazed. "While on the streets, I documented every story I came across. Educated professionals, talented individuals, mostly Black and Latino, shut out of jobs with the same excuse I was given: you don't fit the culture." From the side of the stage, Malcolm Grant leaned forward, and in that moment, he finally recognized her. The woman who had cared for Oliver, the woman he'd been searching for. "As Grant Global celebrates inclusion," Lila said, unlocking her phone, "its leadership speaks a very different language behind closed doors." She tapped a button. Footage appeared on the screen. Crawford laughing during an internal meeting. "Of course we want diversity on our flyers, but not in the executive boardroom." Another clip followed. "Add some color to the entry-level teams to hit the targets. But don't touch the strategy roles. You know the deal." Murmurs echoed across the hall. Crawford's face turned white. Those clips are completely out of context," he stammered. "I have the full recordings," Lila responded calmly. "And documents showing that under Mr. Crawford's oversight, nearly 9 out of 10 qualified Black candidates were dismissed with the same vague rejection I received." Emails flashed on the screen, internal notes, interview feedback, and HR memos revealing a clear pattern. Malcolm stood up and began walking toward the stage. Crawford looked around, panicked. "Mr. Grant, this is an ambush, a smear attempt." Malcolm took the microphone. His voice rang out across the auditorium. "I take full responsibility," he said, "not just for our failed policies, but for our failed values." Gasps swept the crowd. Malcolm Grant had never, not once, admitted fault in public. "Miss Monroe," he said, looking straight at Lila, "today you've reminded us what real courage and character look like. Qualities we pretend to reward, but rarely recognize." Crawford tried to slip away. Malcolm stopped him with a firm hand. "As of this moment, Daniel Crawford is no longer employed by Grant Global. And starting tomorrow, we're launching a full investigation into our hiring and promotion practices." Then, more softly to Lila, "And I owe you a personal apology, one I'd like to offer in private." Backstage, while the event unraveled into commotion, Malcolm found Lila calmly gathering her papers. My son asks about you every day, he said gently. She looked up, puzzled. How did you know? He calls you the scarf lady, said you used it to clean his knee. That stuck with him, and with me. In the weeks that followed, Grant Global would undergo a dramatic transformation, executive firings, new leadership, complete restructuring. But few people noticed the deeper irony that the man who built his empire preaching meritocracy had finally realized real merit doesn't come from comfort or connections. It rises from struggle, from standing tall when you have nothing left. And what no one could have expected was how one confrontation would not only change Lila's life or the future of a company, but awaken something long buried in the heart of a man who, for the first time, saw the world beyond his bubble. As the shock waves from the public reveal echoed through boardrooms across the country, one question lingered. What would happen when young Oliver discovered that the woman he called the Scarf Lady and his father's newest partner shared a deeper bond than anyone could have imagined? 6 months after the conference that rattled the corporate elite, Vision Weekly ran a feature titled The Grant Awakening: How One Homeless Woman Rewired a Corporate Giant. The cover showed Lila Monroe, now Director of Social Equity at Grant Global, standing beside Malcolm Grant at a newly opened housing initiative. The first time I saw Lila, Malcolm said in the article, she was caring for my son while I froze. To the world I represented, she was invisible. Today, she leads every conversation that matters. The new Workforce Center, built exactly where Lila's former shelter had been shut down under false pretense, offered transitional housing, training, and job placement for those at risk. At Oliver's suggestion, the program was named Project Scarf. It had already helped over 200 people regain stable employment. Meanwhile, Daniel Crawford found himself the subject of a class action lawsuit filed by former staff and rejected applicants. His professional life was over. No company would touch him after the evidence of discriminatory practices surfaced. And in a twist noted gleefully on social media, he was now sending resumes into the same system he had once used to exclude others. Bias has a price that's more than just ethical, Lila explained in a TED Talk that soon went viral. When companies shut doors on people because of skin color, accent, or background, they don't just shatter lives. They sabotage their own future. The partnership between the Ramiko Initiative and Grant Global became a case study in business schools. Amara Lin, now a senior advisor on the corporate board, liked to say with a smile, "They tried to buy us out to shut us up. Instead, we helped them find their soul, and it turned out to be more valuable than they ever imagined." One crisp autumn afternoon, while overseeing the launch of a new community hub, Lila received a message. A woman newly accepted into the program had written, "You probably don't remember me, but 3 years ago you gave me the last piece of your sandwich at a shelter. You said I needed it more. I never forgot. Today, I get to begin again." The ripple effect of Lila's quiet kindness, even at her lowest point, was now changing lives she would never meet. At home. Yes, she finally had a home. Lila kept one thing framed on her shelf, the small scarf she had once used to clean Oliver's knee. Now washed and pressed, it symbolized a transformation no one could have predicted. Oliver, who had given himself a helper role in Project Scarf, often accompanied her to events. "When I grow up," he whispered one day, "I want to help people. Like you." "You already do," Lila smiled. "Do you know how?" "How?" he asked. "By seeing people," she said, "that others pretend not to." From across the room, Malcolm watched as his son listened to her, the woman who had reshaped his understanding of the world, and he realized that one tiny hesitation, the moment he chose not to intervene, had become the turning point that rewrote not only company policy but also the very meaning of his life. "There's something I've come to understand," Malcolm shared during a fundraising gala that generated millions for affordable housing. "Privilege isn't just about what you possess. It's about all the things you've never had to notice. For years, I built walls to protect my wealth when I should have been building bridges to extend opportunity. But real change, he admitted, wasn't just in policies. It was in the everyday moments. Malcolm now knew the names of every janitor and kitchen staffer. Oliver, his son, started sharing his lunch with kids who couldn't afford one. And Lila, no longer just carried a journal of pain. She carried a blueprint for progress. "People ask if I feel like I won," she said in an interview. But this was never about victory. It was about balance. Real triumph isn't about defeating those who wronged you. It's about turning them into allies. Lila's journey, from sleeping on concrete to sitting at the boardroom table, echoed far beyond the city skyline. In schools, startups, and civic halls, her story, what many called the Lila effect, reshaped how people viewed inclusion. Not as a checklist, but as a compass pointing to a fairer future. On the anniversary of her first year at the company, she received a small gift from Malcolm and Oliver, a box. Inside, a crisp, white handkerchief, and a note, "For the next beginning." Tears welled in her eyes. It wasn't just a gesture of appreciation, it was a full-circle moment, a symbol that true change doesn't always begin with grand speeches, but with a small, selfless act, like cleaning a child's scraped knee. That night, as she looked out over the city that had once ignored her and now honored her, Lila understood something deeper. Justice isn't about revenge. It's about designing a world where cruelty becomes rare and kindness becomes routine. And as the lights of Halden City shimmered under the dark sky, a quiet truth lingered. Sometimes the boldest revolution isn't tearing down what's broken, but rebuilding it from within, with compassion, with dignity, with the courage to care when no one else does. If this story moved you and reminded you that real change begins with small gestures, subscribe to the channel for more stories, where the overlooked become the leaders, and where kindness rewrites the rules of the world we live in.